Hello, and welcome to Myth Monsters. My name is Erin, and I'll be your host for these little snack bite-sized podcasts on folklore and mythical monsters from around the world. These podcasts focus on the actual cryptids, folklore and mythic monsters from global mythology, rather than focusing on the full stories of heroes and their big adventures. I'll also be dropping in some references that they have to recent culture and where you can see these represented in modern day content so that you can learn more and get as obsessed as I am about these absolute legends of the mythological world. Blimey, it's June already. This year is speeding past and the summer is in full swing, but thankfully not bringing the horrible heat to the UK just yet. I've actually been on a cat reconnaissance mission this week to rescue a local stray that I love before he ends up fathering another 7 kittens outside my house. But anyway, this week we are not going anywhere in particular, but some say that these mythical monsters are all around us all the time, so join me as we're hitching a ride on a prayer to meet the angels from generally world and religious folklore. Before we start, you may be thinking, hey, I remember that you've covered angels in the past. Why are you doing this episode? To that I say, I technically covered one of the many types of angels, the seraphim, who will be mentioned in this episode too, but these are a specific type of angel. In this episode, we're going to go over what makes an angel in general before we dive into the different types, which are all planned to have their own episodes along the way. This is more of a deep dive into the generic and umbrella term angels. For example, another way we've used this in the past is in theory, Sasquatch is an umbrella term for Bigfoot, Yetis and Yowies, but they also exist in their own right, and so will be covered as well as their more famous specifics. So, what are angels? Angels are, and this is very generally, described as the most beautiful person you have ever seen, with large white bird wings, a halo, and sometimes surrounded by holy light in a humanoid form. They are usually dressed in togas or some other form of robe, and speak with sweet voices in every single human language, and their own strange one. Angels are usually known for being the messengers between God and humanity, and can also perform benevolent acts for people, such as protecting or guiding them. However, they can also alter humans' perception of the world around them and force humans to think as they do. And as well as the benevolent acts, they are also considered the hand of God and can act out punishments on humans too. They are also known as the defenders of heavens against their biggest foe, devils from the hells, so are mostly military trained too. They have the power to fly with these huge wings, as well as granting prayers in any way that works for the person requesting them. They are able to turn into spheres of light, appear on command, and are completely immortal and invulnerable to humankind. You also can't just become an angel either. They are considered a whole other race to humans, and there is no way to kill one. We also believe that they don't eat, drink, procreate, or sleep, so they're kind of unstoppable. But this is just our generic angel that you've probably seen a million times over in movies and TV. But angels are a lot more complex than this because they are involved in almost every monotheistic religion, meaning that you would worship under one deity. And to make it even more complicated, as I said earlier, there are different types of angels within this and a hierarchy to them, so they can also be all different shapes, sizes and natures based on what type they are. So, let's talk angels and what they all do in the main religions that they're covered in. I did cover this before in my specific seraphim episode because I quite frankly didn't realise I was going to do an angel one afterwards. So if you've heard this before and you've listened to that one, I am sorry, it's a bit of a repeat, but it's good for new listeners as well. In Christianity, there are 9 types of angels in 3 different triads. In the first triad, to contemplate and adore God directly, seraphims are the most powerful, usually depicted as basically a ball of feathers and eyes. Followed closely by the cherubim, who look very similar to them, but are usually described as being like cherubs, so the little babies with wings, and they protect sacred spaces like Eden. Then we have angels called the Thrones, who are the most monstrous looking eye-covered, intertwined rings with wings, who dispense God's justice and maintain harmony in all the cosmos. Now from here, all of the angels look like generic angels I described earlier. The weird ones are just within the top 3. In the second triad, generally for defence are the dominions who govern nations, the virtues who rule over miracles and blessings, and the powers who guard heaven from demons. And the last 3 are the principalities who rule over angels and keep them in line, archangels who are the guardians of nations and countries, and lastly, guardian angels who look over specific people and support and help them on earth. Now in Judaism, there are still 9, but the hierarchy is slightly different with each text. The original philosophy was the following. Shayot Hot Kadesh were the top dogs, who hold up the throne of God and look very similar to seraphim. The Ophanim, who look like the thrones with their intertwining eye-covered rings, and they reflect God's will. And then the Erelem, who were normal-looking angels, who were just known as angels of earthly justice. Following this, we have the Hashmalim, who are elemental angels, and then the Seraphim, who again are these emblazoned winged creatures who praise God around his throne. Then we have the Malachim, who are the usual messengers to earth. Lastly, the Elohim, who are warriors who strive for victory over evil, the Bene Elohim, who are also warriors, and lastly, the Cherubim. Oh, how the mighty have fallen from Christianity. But they just kind of hang around God's feet and chill, as they were the first beings in existence, so that's pretty cool. Now, going over to Islam, they have archangels who reign over the plights of men, guardian angels who physically guard people, then the angels of judgment, of heaven, of the netherworld, and of the weather, which are all pretty self-explanatory in terms of what they do. Lastly, in all of these, we have fallen angels, who of course don't fall into the hierarchy, who are the evil and banished angels from heaven. They usually have committed some kind of sin, or they've abandoned their posts and are banished to hell, usually becoming a powerful demon, the most famous of which of course being Lucifer, a fallen angel who became the devil himself for tempting Eve with the apple of knowledge in Eden. These angels tend to keep their powers, and that is why they become such powerful foes. I'll cover these in much greater detail in their own episodes like I did the Seraphim, so if you're more interested in them, do check that episode out. But this is just kind of a summary of all of the angels we know of in those biggest religions. So, let's talk about etymology before we jump into more religious history. They actually have different names in different languages, but the English angel comes from the Latin word angelus and the Greek angelos. This derives originally from Hebrew malak, which means messenger, and also where the Jewish faith gets their name for them too. The Quranic word for angel is malak, which comes from either malaka, meaning he controlled, or the root word ik, which means messenger. But unlike the Hebrew version, it is only used for divine spirits and not normal messengers too. Now, we've obviously talked about angels and how many there are, but where do they come from in each religion? Well, an important note is that all angel history comes from the holy books of these religions, and of course, we don't know exactly when they were written, or if word-of-mouth myths existed of these creatures beforehand. So, if you're looking for that, I'm sorry, I don't have the answer, and I don't think anyone else does either, but it's a very long time ago, we at least know that, and I've got some rough guesstimates on how old the books are in this, but again, they are rough estimates through historians, not just me. The oldest here is Judaism, where we believe the holy book is from at least around the 8th century BC. Angels are mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, and angels appeared to Isaac, Moses, Jacob, and Joshua throughout their lives in the book of Genesis. And a load of archangels appear within rabbinic literature, including Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael, to name a few of the famous ones you might know. In the Christian Bible, angels were first mentioned in the book of Genesis again, where they were guarding the Garden of Eden. However, whilst it isn't said when and how the angels were created, they were made before the world was, and they witnessed the creation of it. The hierarchy of angels does have a more specific date within Christianity, coming in around the 5th century BC, with all of the different types of angels appearing throughout the holy books, but most of them throughout the book of Ezekiel. Lastly, in Islam, they are mentioned in the Quran, which we believe was written around 600 AD, and they are created by Allah as heavenly beings made from light. They are considered some of the oldest beings in existence, and they protect humans from evil influences, and they record human life. The Archangel Jibril was seen as the archangel responsible for revealing the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad for the first time, starting the Islamic faith. Angels, though, are sometimes considered outside of religion in the form of guardian angels, with some people not belonging to any of these religions believing that they have a guardian angel watching over them, that protects them and grants them good luck. Some of these people even believe that you pass down your guardian angel to family and your offspring. However, there hasn't been any mythical backup to this outside of religion. And outside of worship, angels are also embraced within culture and media, with angel being a common word of endearment for a good person or someone who does good deeds. It's also used for someone good who has died, although it doesn't say in any faith that people become angels when they die. Not to rain on anyone's parade, but they are a completely different species to us, based on mythology. They are also plastered all over our media as the stalwart, godly messengers, which I can get into more now. Obviously, this is a huge list, so I've whittled it down to the most popular bits of modern media for angels, as there are just so many. For art, there are loads of classical pieces on angels, so have a look at the Schutzengel by Bernard Pockhurst, Jacob Wrestling with the Angel by Gustave Doré from 1855, The Wounded Angel by Hugo Simberg from 1903, Three Angels hosted by Abraham by Ludovico Caricci from 1610, Christus e Gethsemane by Karl Heinrich Bloch from 1873, and Tobias and the Angel by Filippino Lippi from 1472 for all the portrait art. Otherwise, look at independent stuff. It's angels. It's pretty cool. In movies, we have The Prince of Egypt, Time Masters, The Secret of the Hunchback, Time Bandits, The Prophecy, Wishmaster, Noah, Constantine, Barbarella, It's a Wonderful Life, Dogma, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, Don't Kill It, Ice Angel, The Dark Crystal, City of Angels, Angels in the Outfield, Casper, The Adjustment Bureau, Knowing, Michael, The Ten Commandments, Legion, Ice Merchants, The Bishop's Wife, A New York Christmas Wedding, Bedazzled, Fallen, Gabriel, Wings of Desire, and He Never Died. For TV, we have Angel, Good Omens, Angel Mouse, The Good Place, Supernatural, Angels of Charm, Has Been Hotel, Hell of a Boss, Berserk, Adventure Time, Futurama, South Park, Spawn, Angel Wars, Eternal Law, The Seven Deadly Sins, Digimon, Brimstone, Seven Mortal Sins, Queen's Blade, Married with Children, Teen Angel, The Twilight Zone, Quantum Leap, Johnny Bravo, Angel's Friends, Black Butler, Angel Sanctuary, Doctor Who, Lucifer, Penny Dreadful, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Angels in America, Charmed, Babylon 5, Dominion, Preacher, Highway to Heaven, X-Files, and Super Sentai. In video games, we have ones such as Angel at Dusk, Darksiders, Diablo, Shin Megami Tensei, Ultra Kill, Ion, Fall from Heaven, Disgaea, Lusternia, Baldur's Gate 2 and 3, Elder Scrolls, Kid Icarus, The Secret World, World of Warcraft, Bayonetta, Helltaker, Dwarf Fortress, Pokemon, Class of Heroes 2, Bendy and the Ink Machine, Final Fantasy, Grand Blue Fantasy, Arknights, The Binding of Isaac, Devil May Cry, Heroes of Might and Magic, NetHack, Luminous Arc, Kingdom Hearts, Okami, Paladins, Tales of Symphonia, Unicorn Overload, Overwatch, Shadow Hearts, Neon White, and The World Ends With You. Now, my book recommendations this week are Angels, The Definitive Guide to Angels from Around the World by Marie-Ange Fageroles. And if you want to look more into biblical angels, have a look at God's Monsters, Vengeful Spirits, Deadly Angels, Hybrid Creatures, and Divine Hitmen of the Bible by Esther Hamori for a really great read about them in a religious context. But now, it's time for Do I Think They Existed? The question of if I believe in angels intrinsically comes back to, do I believe there is something up there in the sky? As they are, realistically, just the assistants of whatever god you worship. Now, I'm not a major religion worshipper as a Hellenic pagan, and the ancient Greeks didn't have angels, so it's tricky from a religion perspective for me personally to believe in angels, because in my religion, they never existed at all. So by default, they're a big no from me. But that just doesn't really sound very interesting, so I'm sorry about that. However, this particular Do I Believe They Existed segment is usually personal to me, but for this one, it's personal to everyone separately and what they believe in regard to a higher power. And if you are one of the people in one of the religions who believes in angels, do you believe that they exist alongside whichever god you worship? That is a personal question to you, my dear listeners. I do think that if I did believe in a singular god, that I would also believe in angels, as they do tend to come hand in hand, and are so heavily in the media as factual beings that sure, maybe they could. I'm generally very open to all of these monsters that I cover existing though, but religious ones are trickier when you're not part of the religions that they are a part of. I guess guardian angels are somewhat different because you can take them out of the religious context, but I promise you even more that I don't believe in those, and I do struggle to see how others do if I'm completely honest. I can't say I've ever met someone in real life who believes in guardian angels, like seriously. But what do you think? Do angels look over us from the heavens? Let me know on Twitter, I would love to know what you think about this one. Well, through it all, she offers me protection, a lot of love and affection, and I am indeed loving angels instead. If you don't know that Robbie Williams song, I did say I was going to reference it loads, but I had to stop myself. It's a big recommendation. If you don't know who Robbie Williams is, you're missing out. But what a great monster. I love covering big ones like this to eventually have a whole species of them dissected for you in 20-ish minute episodes. How fun. Speaking of episodes, next week we're heading over to Japan and looking at a nightmare-inducing monster for those with thalassophobia like me. So come with me in the depths to find the strange cryptid, the Ningen, next Thursday. I'm really scared for this one. For now though, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give it a rating on the service you are listening on. I've got the Twitter for any questions or suggestions on what monsters to cover next, and I'd really love to hear from you. The social media handles for TikTok, YouTube, Threads and Instagram are Myth Monsters Podcast, and the Twitter is Myth Monsters Pod. But all of our content can be found at mythmonsters.co.uk, including some very cool merchandise. But you can also find us on Good Pods, Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon if you want to help me fund the podcast too. Come join the fun though, share this with your pals. They might love me as much as you do. But for now, stay spooky. And I'll see you later, babes.